So primary goal here is for the intensity. Top set, the bar weight keeps going up, the magnitude of weight on the bar. The primary goal of the volume day is that the tonnage continues to go up as the volume goes up, while staying at a percentage that is specific enough to drive a strength adaptation. You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship.
Welcome back to Barbell Logic, and welcome back to the MED Masterclass. This is your producer, Trent, and I'm welcoming you back to part 4 of the Masterclass series. So in part 1, we listened to Matt lay down the logical framework for minimum effective dose programming, why and how we would program this way as opposed to using standardized models and templates. Then in Masterclass number 2, we saw some practical examples of how you can walk from the vanilla novice LP programming to a sort of advanced novice programming using back offsets, light days, and then eventually into an early intermediate style training program like heavy, light, medium, or Texas method. Then in Masterclass number 3, we carried that idea even further, moving from an HLM style program to a 4-day split, which opens up a lot of possibilities for programming the main lifts as well as accessory lifts, supplemental lifts, and all sorts of other good stuff. So that brings us to number 4, today's episode. Today we're going to talk about options in the 4-day split. So the 4-day split is kind of like the great wide open of programming. There's so many different ways to slice and dice this program. It offers so many options for the advancing lifter. It's both a really flexible tool, but it can also be kind of confusing if you're trying to walk yourself through this kind of program. So the coaches had quite a few questions about how to manage the 4-day split. So in today's episode, we're going to listen in on the coaches' questions and begin to flesh out this 4-day split model that we first talked about last episode and get a better understanding of the different options that are before you when you're training in this method. Then in the second half of this episode, we'll start talking about what to do after the basic 4-day split program stops working and some of your options as you get deeper and deeper into intermediate programming and towards the advanced end of the spectrum. So get out your pens and pencils, get ready to take some notes, and let's listen to Masterclass number 4.
So let's pick up with questions about the actual transition processes that you guys made in the assignment from last week, going into this week, of moving from a 3-day full body type program like HLM or Texas method into the 4-day split. That's really what I'd like to do tonight, is spend about the first half of the class talking about how to transition into that 4-day split correctly, how we actually get there, and then spend the second half of the class tonight talking about the freedom that the 4-day split gives us to move on from here. So before we actually really focus on the 4-day split and what it is, I want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, because it's one of the biggest changes you'll ever make in programming, even in an MED style of like making that minimum effective dose change. Transitioning from 3 days a week to 4 days a week is a pretty big change. But at some point, it's the change that needs to be made. It's the minimum effective dose change for maximum return on investment, is moving from those 3 days to 4 days. So what questions do you guys have about actually transitioning?
One coach here discussed his assignment in which he had a theoretical lifter transitioning from a heavy, light, medium program into a 4-day split, and that lifter was doing one heavy set of 5 on both squats and deadlifts right before the transition. So Matt's feedback on this coach's assignment was that that was not enough work going into the 4-day split. What Matt would have preferred to see instead was a top set of 5 with some additional back offsets, so that the lifter had more volume before dropping the frequency of their squatting and deadlifting to twice a week from 3 times a week.
That is what I was saying on your assignment. Let me be clear that that's specific to a demographic, right? Mm-hmm. I remember like Nick's assignment specifically this morning. His guy is like deadlifting one set of 5 for 605. Probably doesn't need to do back offs. Maybe doesn't, right? Like, that's real stressful. And so it depends on who the person is or what the demographic is. But it also depends on, well, let me ask you, what else would it depend on? And this is maybe a thing that everybody knows that we're doing this, but I want to make sure that it actually gets communicated. Other than demographics, how do we choose how many sets and reps the person gets on individual exercises going from the 3-day to the 4-day split?
The answer here is that it depends on how many reps and sets the lifter was doing before the transition.
Right. So stop for a second. One of the major changes of this type of program, the way we approach programming from we have a paradigm shift here, where as we start to look into what most advanced intermediate, late intermediate, advanced programming looks like for everyone else, including what I did for decades, is if I coached a competitive lifter like Nick, what I would do is after Nick did his meet, I would take his PRs from the meet and I would set the entire next program based on his PRs. Only the problem with that is like that was a competitive environment on a specific day. Often he'll take 3 weeks off and go on vacation to Mexico and drink margaritas. And then he starts a new program based on his PRs that he set maybe 3 weeks ago. Maybe he sets this program based on his PRs from 3 months ago. Maybe he sets it based on PRs from 3 years ago. And the difference between that and which is what everybody else does, including what I did for years, and what we're talking about here is that the next step of programming change is always based on what they were immediately previously doing. Does that make sense? And I'll flesh it out practically for you guys, but I want to make sure you get the theory of it first. So here's why that matters. If on deadlift intensity day, during their HLM or Texas Method style training, whatever that weekly 3-day-a-week programming was, if they were doing 1 set of 5 on their deadlift intensity movement on the 3-day split day, when I move to the 4-day split, their intensity should be deadlift 1 set of 5. They're going to just continue. The general goal of moving from the 3-day to the 4-day is to actually do the exact same amount of work, or as close to the exact same amount of work as you were doing, but now you're splitting it up and spreading it over 4 days instead of 3. If their intensity day was 2 sets of 3 on the deadlift instead of 1 set of 5, then I would probably start their intensity day on the 4-day split at 2 sets of 3, because I want to change the least number of things I can. So what they're doing on intensity day or what they're doing on volume day will often have a tremendous amount to do with, it will tell you essentially what you're going to have them do when you go to the 4-day split. What was their volume day like? Well, their volume day was 4 sets of 5 on squats. Well, what you could do is when you go to the 4-day split, you could just go to 4 sets of 5. Or you could also say, but they were squatting 3 times a week. So since I'm pulling out 1 day of frequency, I could add in an additional set or 2 of volume and go from 3 sets of 5 to 4 sets of 5 to 5 sets of 5, right? But on that intensity day, the goal is to continue to make those small intensity incremental jumps. So if their intensity day is 3 sets of 3 or 2 sets of 3 or 1 set of 5 or a top set of 5 and a back off set of 5 or a top set of 3 and 2 back off sets of 3, I would probably just carry that intensity day over to the 4-day split first and wait a few weeks to start making changes to that. Not always, but I mean, in general, I think that's pretty good. We want to basically take the same amount of work they were doing before, and we want to continue to do that same amount of work, but split up over 4 days. And because we are training 4 days instead of 3, the very nature of the increase in frequency changes the stress a little bit. And that's often enough to continue to make progress, right? We know that you're going to back off on the frequency on the squat and the deadlift. And we know that you're going to increase the frequency on the bench press and the press. So those are changes in stresses. We're actually reducing the stress on the lower body lifts a little bit to allow for more recovery. And we believe that we're at a point that training the press and the bench press 1.5 times per week is not enough. So we move those to 2 times a week. And now we are essentially doing the same total amount of work that we were doing on the 3-day, but now we're spreading it out over 4 days. With just a slight switch, a slight shift to a little less lower body work and a little more upper body work. Another way to look at that from a metric standpoint is the total amount of training time should be about the same, right? So if you train an hour and a half, 3 days a week, so that's 4.5 hours, then you could now go to 4-day split and do all of those sessions in like an hour, 10 minutes. And you still end up with 4.5 hours. In general, we just want to do the work they're already doing, and we're replacing the light squat and the light deadlift with the second bench press and press movement. It's pretty simple. Now, if we're going to continue the same amount of work, we didn't address this at all yet last week, but we will a bunch this week. What do I do about the accessory movements? Because a lot of you guys had those in your programs. What if the person on the 3-day, on the heavy, light, medium, or the Texas method split is doing chins on 2 days and rows 1 day? Or they're doing chins 1 day, a prowler 1 day, and a row 1 day. And then you move into a 4-day split. What are you going to do?
One coach replied that he would just keep those in the program.
I would, and a lot of people didn't. I think that when you switch and you go, well, if they're not doing any of that, I don't think I would add it right away. Go to the 4-day split. But if they are doing those things and I go to a 4-day split, remember the goal is to take about the same amount of work you're doing on 3 days and split it up over 4 days in the most logical way possible. That's it. So if they're doing one additional exercise at the end of every workout, and you've got 3 of those workouts, then you have 3 exercises to work in over the course of 4 days that probably still need to be in there. And the 4-day split makes it way easier to do that. You actually have the freedom of the extra slots. Let's think about it for a second. In a 3-day split, let's start here, with no accessory movements, so 3-day full body workouts, like Texas method, with no accessory movements, how many total weekly slots are there? Not a trick question. 9. There are 3 exercises on Monday. There are 3 exercises on Wednesday. There are 3 exercises on Friday. You with me? There are 9 slots. All right. If we just keep the intensity and volume exercises on the 4-day split, how many slots do we have? 8. So we're already down 1, which tells me that I probably got at least one additional slot I need to add. But most people, by the time they move from Texas method or heavy, light, medium to a 4-day split, are doing chins a couple days a week at least. And they might be doing chins 2 days and rows a day. They might be doing chins and dips 1 day and rows on a day or whatever. Or they might be doing prowler on a day. My argument would be in general, because we're trying to follow these major rules of, remember the 3 major principles of MED programming. Number 1, the most important, simplicity over complexity. That's number 1. We're going to choose simplicity over complexity. That doesn't mean that training will never be, or program will never be complex, but as long as we can choose simplicity over complexity, we will. Number 2, we're going to choose intensity over volume. And number 3, we're going to choose economy over excess, right? So I don't want to add a bunch of extra stuff when I go to the 4-day split, but I also don't want to remove a bunch of stuff when I go to the 4-day split, because it's too many variables changed. If those are our principles, we want to really just carry over the same work that we were doing to the 4-day split. And then that opens up all sorts of freedom to make what changes you make in minimum effective dose moving out of LP. There are very few options that you have, right? We talked through those the very first week. Those options of, okay, do I do a top set and some back off sets? Do I go to a Wednesday light day? Like, how many options do you actually have? And for those of you guys that are coaches, there's a handful of you that are in this room right now. Like, aren't there just 2 or 3 different things you'll change towards the end of LP for your clients? There's not like 11 things that you change. But when you get to the 4-day split, it really broadens the number of options you have to start making changes out of the traditional 4-day split. Now you got a bunch of changes that you could potentially make when things stop working. Let's look at it. Let me share my screen.
If you check out the show notes, you can see the tables that Matt's referencing that outline the basic 4-day split template.
So this is a traditional 4-day split. It'll be coming out of a typical HLM or Texas method sort of split. Let's talk through each one of these really quick, and we'll kind of work our way down through. So you can see right now I've got my intensity day set at 1 set of 5. Now, we've already discussed this doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it's going to be. It depends on the demographic. It could just as easily be 2 sets of 3, right? It could just as easily, it might be like 2 sets of 3 on the deadlift. It also might be, it could be one set of 5 and 2 back off sets of 5, right? 2 back off sets at 90% on squat. On press, it could be 1 top set of 5 and 2 back off sets of 5, like any of those, right? So any of those things are fine. It could be any of those things. The idea is that the primary stress driver on this day is intensity, which means the primary metric that we use to make sure that we're making progress is weight on the bar. The weight on the bar keeps going up. Now, some of you on your assignment would have a top single followed by sometimes nothing, top single. And sometimes that it was like maybe 2 by 3. What is the potential problem with, as soon as I go to 4-day split, something like this being my intensity day? What do I run into?
A top single is simply not enough work. And more importantly, what are you going to do next when that stops working?
Yeah, that's right. So how long, if the goal for me is to work up to the top single, which is basically the goal for the intensity day, if the top set is a single, like let's say I come in and I hit deadlift for 375 and the next for a single, and I do a couple drop back off sets. And the next week I go 380. Next week I go 385 and it's a grind. You're like, how long could you just keep working up to a heavy single every single week, hitting essentially a new 1 rep max? Like, how long is that going to last? Not going to last very long. Whereas if my intensity day instead is a top set of 5, let's just deadlift, let's say top set of 5 and then a back off set of 5. Now I have lots of places I can go on intensity day. Now when this top set of 5 fails, I could go to a top set of 3 and a back off set of 5. Or I could go a top set of 3 and 2 back off sets of 5, or a top set of 3 and 2 by 3 back off. And I can continue to run. So you're looking at right now on intensity day, I've got 10 total work reps. That's on deadlift. On squat, it might actually be 1 by 5 and 2 by 5 back off. So now I still have 15 work reps. So I've got a lot of places I can go. We know that the day is coming when I have to trade volume for the intensity. Right? I can't keep making this go up forever. 1 set of 5 on squats and 2 back off sets of 5. But I do have 15 work reps here. So what I can do, since the primary driver of stress on this day is intensity, not on this day, not on the volume day, we'll get there, then I could actually at some point go to, so here's 15 work reps. I could go 1 by 3 and 2 by 5. Now I'm at 13 work reps. And I can keep driving up heavier. 1 by 3, 2 by 4. Now I'm at 11. 1 by 3, 3 by 3. Right? Or 2 by 3 even, right? And keep making progress. 1 by 3 and 1 by 3 if I had to, right? Or 1 by 2 and 2 by 3. That's 8. But if I'm doing a single and then 1 by 3 back off, that's only 4 reps, and I don't have very far to go. I can't pull much more volume, and I'm already probably flirting with disaster and saying it's probably just not enough work here. I need some more work. And some of your demographics, you had these like young guys that were 24 years old, and you had them working up to like just a top triple for their intensity. I was like, man, give them some back offs. They're 23. They can handle it. I'll stop there and take some questions. Any questions about intensity? I can't see you, so you're just going to have to unmute yourself and ask.
Someone asked if Matt, when he's transitioning someone from a 3-day model to a 4-day split, if he's going to automatically include back off sets on that intensity day.
Yep. No, that's That's a good question. And the simple answer is you probably already had the back offsets there on their intensity lift during the Texas method or heavy, light, medium. You probably did. If you didn't, then you have to make a choice. Do I just carry over and just do one set and keep it at the one set? Or at this point, because I'm going, especially on squat and deadlift, because I'm reducing the frequency so much, can I add a set to intensity or volume day or both to sort of keep the same amount of work? So again, I would look at what you're doing for that heavy day on the heavy, light, medium, which is actually probably the medium, or the heavy day, or the medium stress day, same day. If you're only doing one set and no back offs, you might just keep it at one set and no back offs. Certainly, if you have back offs, I would go ahead and keep the back offs. Question is, if you don't have back offs and you don't feel like it's enough work, how do you make sure they get a little more work to keep it all evened out? This is probably closer to what it's going to look like here. You're probably going to be at one set of 5 on deadlift and like one set of 5 back off. Squat, you're going to be at one set of 5, top set of 5, and 2 sets of 5 back off. Press intensity, you've probably had to move to 3s on the bench press and the press. So they were probably doing 4 sets of 3 or 5 sets of 3, somewhere in there. So you're like at one top set of 3 and 3x3 back off, and same thing on bench press. It's probably going to look something like that, although again, it just depends on the demographic of the person, how far they were able to ride the 3-day. If they got in the 3-day and they did it for 4 weeks and they were like, I'd really like to move to a 4-day split, you're like, cool, I love the 4-day split. And you just go ahead and move them to it. It's fine. They might have more volume here than what I've got. Again, the idea is for that top set, the top set, we're not worrying about tonnage. We're not doing total. We're not saying, okay, this guy's doing 12 reps on bench press, 12 reps times this weight, times this weight, whatever, 3 reps times this weight plus 9 reps at this weight gives me the tonnage. I don't care about the tonnage on intensity day. I care about the weight on the bar continuing to go up. Not at all costs, because I can get there too fast. I can just go to a single, and obviously the weights on the bar is going to be heavy. It just doesn't get me progress very long. As long as I've got a little bit of volume in here, I can start backing off this volume a little bit each week or every couple weeks and make sure that this top set, the weight keeps going up. As long as I'm doing 5s and I'm going to hold 5s as long as I can. When I can't do 5s anymore, I'm going to back these off to triples. When I can't do top set of triple anymore, I'll probably back this off to a double or a single and some back offs, but I'd probably go double first. The goal here is that the weight keeps going up on the intensity day on the top set. That's the goal. So that's the intensity day. Volume is pretty easy. So volume is volume, right? It's going to be somewhere between, for almost everybody, 3 sets of 5 and 5 sets of 5. That doesn't mean everybody. Could be 4 sets of 4. So 5 sets of 5 is 25 reps. 3 sets of 5 is 15 reps. It's probably going to be between those two for all the lifts in the beginning when you first get to 4-day split. Will it ever get higher than 5 sets of 5? Sure, it can. Can it go to 6 sets of 5 or 7 sets of 5, especially on the upper body lifts? Yeah, it can. It's not very fun, but it can. Will it ever be lower than 3 sets of 5? Sure, there are probably some people who may do a little less volume than this if they're really, really strong on deadlift. But for most people, it's going to be about 3 sets of 5. I tend to have people deadlift about 1 set less than the other ones. So if the person is young enough and virile enough to do 5 sets of 5 on all the other stuff, then I may very well have them do 4 sets of 5 on deadlift. Especially if they were somewhere in that ballpark. If you looked at their total work, if I look at their intensity volume and their volume compared to what they were doing on Texas Method or Heavy, Light, Medium, I'm going to try to keep them in that same work realm, right? Remember, they probably had a third lighter deadlift day. Often, if you're coming from 3 sets of 5, a lot of you guys did this. You went to 4 sets of 5 on these other lifts, and you did 3 sets of 5 on deadlift, and that's perfectly appropriate. As a matter of fact, I would probably argue, especially for the bench press and the press, with the increase in frequency, if the most volume I've ever done on the bench press and press is 3 sets of 5, I'm probably not going right from 3 sets of 5 to 5 sets of 5. I'm probably going to go 4 sets of 5 first, and then eventually 5 sets of 5. And this is just a general, not a rule, but something that I have just noticed over time is with most of my clients, whatever their volume is on the other lifts, I'm going to do 1 set less on the deadlift. What's the primary driver metric we use on the volume movement to make sure we're making progress? Tonnage. Right? So if I increase the volume and I have to decrease the intensity a little bit when I do it, I want to go ahead and do the math. You guys know how to, let me make sure I get this, because there's probably some people in the class that aren't entirely sure how to do this. Let's say this 4 sets of 5 is 4 sets of 5 at 300 pounds. Do you know how to do the tonnage? I know most of you do. Don't just tell me, shout out if you do, but just in case you don't. Tonnage is taking the sets times the reps times the weight. So 4 by 5 is 20 times 300. Is that going to be 6,000? Is that right? Did I do that right? 4 times 5 times 300 is 6,000. So the tonnage for this workout would be 6,000 pounds. We don't add the warm-ups because you can cheat your way through warm-ups to get the tonnage up. We just count the work sets and reps. Tonnage would be 6,000. Now, if I went to 5 by 5 at what? When I made that next step up, I've got to make sure that the 5 by 5 at 6,000, there's 5 by 5 at whatever weight, is at least 6,000 or more in tonnage. So if I do it at 280, say I have to drop 20 pounds, I go 5 times 5 equals 25 times 280. That's 7,000. This is more tonnage. That's fine. But if I go 250, I'm just guessing here, 5 times 5 times 250. Oh, that's 6,250. That's actually heavier too. So you can see that as soon as you add that extra set of 5, you're never going to have to drop this much. You can keep making sure that the tonnage goes up. What would be an average drop if you're at 4 sets of 5 at 300 or 4 sets of 5 at, say, whatever it is? How much percentage are you going to have to drop adding an extra set of 5?
The main response was about 10% or less.
I'd agree with that. If we backed off 8%, 300 times 0.08, that's 24 pounds. That'd be 276. 5 by 5 at 276. That's 6,900. So now my tonnage still went up 900 pounds. Yeah, 900 pounds with an 8% decrease in weight. And then I can start working up from there to 275, 280, 285, so on and so forth. When I can't make progress anymore, I'm probably on volume day. I'm probably going to go to 6 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 6 or more than 25 reps, whatever it is. I'm going to have to back off my weight a little bit more, make sure my tonnage still goes up. It's the primary goal. Okay, so primary goal here is for the intensity. Top set, the bar weight keeps going up, the magnitude of weight on the bar. The primary goal of the volume day is that the tonnage continues to go up as the volume goes up, while staying at a percentage that is specific enough to drive a strength adaptation. Certainly 80% and up of 1 rep max will work. For some of you, 75% and up will work, and for some of you, even 70% may work. But for my mom, 70% will not work. Right? So you've got a spectrum there. Okay. Now, let's talk about this stuff right here. Remember we talked about earlier, we've got this potential for accessory movements. The 4-day split really opens up the possibility for accessory movements. We've only filled 8 slots. We know coming into this that your lifter or you or your client or whatever, they were doing at least 9 slots of exercises. And that's with no accessory work. They were probably doing chins, at least. Maybe they were in chins and rows. So let's talk upper body day first because it's real easy. What are some appropriate upper body accessory movements that you could have at the end of the press and bench press or bench press and press day? Already said one. I'll give you chins. This could obviously be pull downs, right? For somebody who can't do chins. So those are kind of interchangeable. What else?
Other options are barbell rows, dips, lying triceps extensions.
Those are 4 really good ones, right? There are a few others. You guys know I made the video on the rolling dumbbell extension. I love a rolling dumbbell extension. I like it better than an LTE, but I really like an LTE too. I have pretty much all my clients do that. Dips work fine as long as they don't hurt the shoulders. Make sure you lean forward, all that kind of fun stuff. But now we've filled these slots up a little bit, and now we have 12 slots filled, right? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'll usually knock these out real fast. This is not like I'm resting 4 minutes between sets here. Not interested. Matter of fact, I typically will superset them the longer I've programmed. I'll do a set of barbell rows, set LTE, set of barbell rows, set LTE, set of barbell rows, set LTEs, done. Walk out of the gym. I like the barbell row on the heaviest bench press day because they're the same. They work the same plane. I don't know if that actually matters. I don't want to get too Kelly Starrett on you guys. Same thing with press and chins. You might argue that there's more stress on the volume day, and the barbell row could be with the bench press volume, and the chins could be with the press volume. It probably doesn't matter. It's just what I tend to do. So the day that's the press intensity day, I tend to do the chins, and then so like that kind of what they call a vertical pull. And on the bench press, I'll tend to do a horizontal pull. It really doesn't matter. I have lots of people do chins both days. I have lots of people do barbell rows both days. I have lots of people do LTEs both days or rolling dumbbell extensions both days. But you've got a couple options there. What about on the lower body day?
So there was a wider range of answers on this one. One coach said he doesn't do anything for lower body accessory lifts. Another answer was glute ham raises. Someone else said pushing the prowler. And then another coach said stiff-legged deadlifts.
You could, but man, that's hard when you're deadlifting. To me, this is a good thing to talk through. So to me, a stiff-legged deadlift or an RDL is what I call a supplemental movement. Supplemental. It looks like the main movement, but isn't the main movement. An accessory movement doesn't look like the main movement. It's a completely separate movement. The prowler doesn't look anything like a deadlift and squat. A glute ham raise doesn't look anything like a deadlift or squat. A chin doesn't look anything like a press or a bench press, right? And so if I'm going to do, I'm not going to tend to do a straight leg deadlift or an RDL or something like that, or like a press lockout. All of those sort of things are supplemental exercises that will eventually take the place of these volume pieces. That's 2 weeks from now. Actually, it's 3 weeks from now because we don't have class next Sunday. But now let's talk about what Cody said. If they're not doing any lower body accessory movement when you move to the 4-day split, I would argue hard to have them do nothing at the end of these 2 movements. This is not the time to just, hey, okay, now that you're doing 4 days a week, let's add some additional accessory work on lower body day. But once their body adjusts to this volume and this 4-day-a-week split, and if the person is overweight and they want to add some conditioning here, this is probably the day to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it either. The key on conditioning, different class or different time, is conditioning needs to be low impact, low skill, high intensity. And intensity there, we're talking about heart rate percentage. Prowler is very low impact, very low skill. Anybody can push a prowler. You don't have to learn. You think about it like a power clean is a very high skill movement. Prowler, like you just push the prowler down the street, right? Push it down the street for about 3 runs, quote unquote, air quote runs, 3 fast walks, 3 slow jogs, and you're done. You leave. And the next time you come in, maybe you do it for 4. And you max that out at about 7, and that's it. If you don't need it, you don't need it. A lot of people don't need it at all. The vast majority of my clients do nothing here, and the vast majority of my clients do something at the end of upper body day. Now, they might just start with 1 accessory movement because it's an MED sort of change, and then after a few weeks, I might add that additional tricep work. And they might do curls or something too. There's nothing wrong with that either. The point here with the accessory movements, then we're going to take a quick break, is that it opens up the possibility to do lots of things because you essentially now have these extra slots of time because this stuff doesn't take as long as the other workouts we're taking because it's 1 less movement. So you have some time to add some accessory if needed. And we don't want to add accessory just because it's fun and just because it's sexy. but we want to do it because we need to get some additional work in, some additional hypertrophy in, some additional conditioning. Like there's something that these two things aren't giving us. Then we can add in some additional slots there. One of the things that doesn't get worked real well in a program like this are the lats. And so that's why we like chins and barbell rows. Like, do the lats work on a deadlift? Of course they work on the deadlift. But they're isometric. They're not moving the humerus, right? They're not extending the humerus. It is extension, I think. Yeah. So it gives us some slots to do that. And it opens up a world of possibilities for us. Okay, let's take a quick break and we'll talk about where to go from here. Okay. All right, let's pick up any questions there from the first part.
Someone asked here, what would you do about power cleans? Where would you put those in the program?
Yeah, I like to use the power clean as a warm-up to the deadlift. I would actually do them before the intensity deadlift first as a warm-up to the intensity deadlift, because typically the volume on power cleans isn't very high. Like we're probably going to do 3 sets of 3. We might do 5 sets of 3. Maybe we work up to a top single there and some back offs.
So we had some interference on Matt's audio on this next bit, but what he's saying with the power clean is that it can kind of serve as a primer of the nervous system. There's no real science behind that, but using the power clean, you can focus on accelerating the bar off the floor and mentally get ready to pull deadlifts fast. So if you're going to program power cleans, program them with deadlifts and do them before your deadlift sets.
When I deadlift, all my warm-up deadlifts are as fast as I can possibly pull them. I'm trying to get my hips open as quick as I can, because I know when it gets heavy, my hips aren't going to want to open. And so I'm trying to, the concentric portion is always quick. So yeah, I'd put the power cleans. If I'm going to do it once a week, I would just put them probably before the intensity deadlift. And then I would just start deadlifting wherever I left off on my cleans. So I'm scheduled to deadlift 500. I'm cleaning up to 275, clean up to 275. Your last clean, pull 275 for 1 or 2, put 315 on, pull it for 3 more reps, 365, a few reps, 405, 455, and here we go. Right? It cuts down on time pretty significantly. If you wanted to power clean twice a week, I'd probably power clean both times before the deadlift, because it's just easier to do it. You can do it as a warm up, and it's, again, it comes back to that economy over excess time. It's the fastest way to get them in. And then if that were the case, I definitely wouldn't do any accessory stuff afterwards. And if I were going to do snatch, if I was going to do power snatch on this, I put them before the upper body days. I've done that lots of times too. So if you got somebody that's also going to power snatch, I would probably put them before the bench press and the press. And if I had to do one, I'd probably do it before the bench press, because it's going to open up the shoulders well before the bench press. And so it probably doesn't really matter. But I'd put them at the beginning of one of those days, or you could even do them both. High frequency on the Olympic lifts works really well. So I would rather do low volume twice a week than higher volume once a week on those lifts. Get up, hit 3 triples, and you're done. And then do it a couple days later, because they seem to practice frequency. Seems to help. That's why the Bulgarians did them 6 days a week. Okay. So the next question is, when that stops working, you get to the point where you can't keep adding weight, or you can't keep on the intensity day, you can't keep adding volume/tonnage on the volume day. What's the next step we make?
One coach said this is the time you can move to a 2 or 3 week mesocycle.
Would anybody argue against that? I'm not saying it's the only way to skin the cat. It is how I would skin it. So I would go from a 1 week program to a 2 or 3 week program. What I do is there are lots of ways to do this, by the way, is I go to from a 1 week to a 3 week. We're like, why don't you go from a 1 week to a 2 week? It would work just fine. It's just that 3 week for me has worked really, really well the last several years. And so I'll go to a top set of 5 on their intensity day on week 1, a top set of 3 on week 2, and a top single on week 3. And the first time through, it's not a 5 rep max, a 3 rep max, and a 1 rep max. It's a heavy 5, usually followed by a couple back offs. A heavy 3, usually followed by a couple back offs. And a heavy 1, again, communication purposes. Let's say it's an RPE 8.5, right? You guys know it's not that I don't ever use RPE, but just so you guys understand, they do 5 and they could have hit 6. They might have been able to hit 7 on that first week. The next week they hit 3, they could have hit 4. The next week they hit a single, they probably could have hit a double. And then they're going to do it over again. And I usually don't have to give a deload after that 3-week cycle. I give that 3-week cycle and I go right into another 3-week cycle. And they hit a top set of 5 and back offs, and then and that top set of 5 that next time through has to beat what they did 3 weeks earlier. Has to. Now I'm comparing new top set of 5 to old top set of 5, right? Or new top set of 3 to old top set of 3. Now here's the question. Even though it's a 3-week program, how often are they setting PRs? Especially by the second time through. How about every workout? On Monday, they're going to hit a new 5-rep max on deadlift. And on Tuesday of week 1, they're going to hit a new 5-rep max on press. And then a new 5-rep max on squat, and then a new 5-rep max on bench press. Actually, I could just even say like 5 RM, right? Now, I'll tell you what I do on back offs, and this is just what I've done lately because I really, really like it. I actually do an AMRAP set or 2 here, also programmed to be about RPE 8.5. Like, oh God, he's programming RPE. What's going on? I don't want to make this too complicated. Here's the idea. Just one top set of 5, I still think my experience has been, is not quite enough work over the course of time. So if those are all 5-rep maxes, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll pick a specific weight and I'll have them hit, let's say I have them hit 365 by AMRAP RPE 8. It might look like that. So I'll actually pick like a round number weight, like 365 is a thing that we all lift. Like it depends on how heavy their deadlift is, obviously, right? This is going to be about a 10 to 12%, maybe up to 15% back off for the back off. And I might even do it for 2 sets of AMRAP. On press and bench press, almost certainly will. So let's say like they've got kind of a milestone number here. And let's say they hit their 5-rep max and they're going to go 175 2 times AMRAP at 175 RPE 8. Might look like that. That means AMRAP, but leave a couple reps in the tank, so it's not really AMRAP. So this is often how I'll utilize RPE 8. What I'm trying to tell people to do here is you're going to do 2 sets of as many reps as you can. Here's the here's the weight you're actually going to do, and leave a couple reps in the tank. That's shorthand for all of that. And then on the volume day, so that's 5-rep max, so that's intensity day, goes 5-rep max, and then they're going to go week 2, 3-rep max, week 3, 1-rep max, or even just heavy single. You could say the first time through, it's just heavy singles and some sort of back off. And I like these. I'm trying to hit PRs at a specific weight. Maybe I'm trying to bench press 225 for a new PR, or 275 for a new PR. I'm trying to press 135 for a new PR. Like those all work pretty fine. Nothing wrong with just doing your standard back off or 2 here. And on volume, I'll typically waive this as well. I might go 5 sets of 5, 4 sets of 5, 3 sets of 5, and increase 85%, 95%. Actually, that wouldn't be right with the thing, but I'm going to go up in weight every week in this. And I might go down in volume, or I might hold the volume the same. I might start a little bit lighter and give them a deload, jump 5%, same volume, 4 sets of 5, jump 5%, 4 sets of 5. Lots of ways to do this. Just make sure that over the course of time that stress continues to go up. And I still get this 5-rep, 3-rep, 1-rep, 3 weeks, volume across the board. And then I'm probably going to get to start playing around with some of this stuff, adding some accessories in here. more choices, right? It's a little more complicated. It's a little less simple. It's a little less economical, but it's the next logical move. What I like about it is, and what I don't like about the verbiage that's been used in the past, is that people will say, well, in a 3-week program, you're only making progress every 3 weeks. And I understand why they say that, and it's not entirely wrong. It's just not the way I look at it. You're right in that we're probably only making a new 1-rep max every 3 weeks in each lift, or new 5-rep max, but I actually get the opportunity to still hit a PR every single day. I'm in a new PR on day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4 of the first week, and I get to do the same thing on the second week. I get to hit new PRs. I get to do the same thing on the third week and hit new PRs. I took one of our starting strength coaches, Harry Fafudis, through this. He went through it 3 times, get PRs all 9 weeks, every single workout. The guy just did great. Just did it and ate, did these AMRAPs. And I just adjusted this volume, to be honest, based on the level of stress he had at the time. I could tell based on the speed of the intensity work and based on whether he was hitting his AMRAPs for what he was supposed to, what I thought he could do. And I would adjust his volume to provide the right amount of work, to get the work capacity right. Like, well, how do I know that? Well, remember, by this time that you're getting to a 4-day split Texas Method 3-week program, you've already worked with this person for 6 months plus. So you know how much volume they can handle. You don't know, like, as long as this is a hypothetical person, like, I don't know, is it 3 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 5 or 6 sets of 5? Is it 75% or 90% or something in between? I don't know. But by 6 months in of training this person, you will know what the volume needs to be the right amount of stress. It's not that difficult. And then if it's too much, you just back off a little bit. You back off a little bit on the volume, or you back off a little bit on the weight. And if it's not enough, you probably keep the weight the same and you'll increase the volume a little bit because it's the volume day. Just like if it's on the intensity day, you would always keep driving up the intensity. And if I have to, I would decrease the volume if I had to. Okay. Just to give you guys kind of the next preview, I would like you to not add supplemental lifts in the changes that you'll make for this assignment in 2 weeks.
In case you're wondering, Matt is referring to the assignment that he gave to the coaches who were taking the original masterclass. So don't worry, you don't have any homework assignments to do.
Now, if you want to add the clean or something at the beginning because of the person that you're coaching, your demographic person that you're using, that's fine. But I would prefer you to not change things from deadlift to rack pulls, deadlift to deficit deadlifts, bench press to close grip bench press to floor press. That's going to be the next week we meet. So we're going to talk about why we're going to hold off as long as possible with exercise selection. As long as we can make progress on the 4 main lifts, we're going to make progress on the 4 main lifts. All right, guys, I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Well, that wraps up Masterclass number 4. Thanks again for tuning in to Barbell Logic. Thank you for staying with us for 4 weeks. I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I hope that you're getting something out of these programming episodes. This is the distillation of dozens of programming episodes that we've done over the years here at Barbell Logic. So hope you enjoy the fact that this is all laid out in a nice, clean package, stepping you from novice LP all the way into advanced training. You know, there's a lot of years of experience behind the ideas in these episodes, and you get it for free. As always, if you have any questions, send those to questions@barbell-logic.com, and Matt and Scott will answer those on an upcoming Q&A episode. While you're at it, go to iTunes and leave us a review there. Make sure it's 5 stars. And share this episode with a friend. Maybe you've got somebody who's into barbell training but hasn't bought into the MED philosophy, or maybe they're just kind of floundering around with their own programming and they could use some help. Send them these episodes. Send them some of our past episodes. If you've got someone in your life that wants to start barbell training and they don't know where to start, go back about 15, 20 episodes. We just did a Getting Started series, which they can listen to. There's parts 1 through 10 that take you all the way from ground zero to lifting barbells 3 times a week, so that can be a helpful resource for them. All right, thanks again for joining Barbell Logic. We will see you in a few days.